Several of my viewers and subscribers have suggested that I do a comparison of the DeWalt DW745 and the Ridgid R4516 table saws. If you are considering either of these saws for your shop, I think you will find this video useful as I do an in-depth, feature-by-feature comparison of these two very popular power tools. Let's take a look at the specifications for the DeWalt DW745. It is a 10-inch, 15-amp saw. At 0-degree bevel, it will slice through about 3 1/8 inch lumber. At 45 degrees, it'll cut through 2 1/4. The RPMs are 3,850. This weighs in at about 45 pounds. Rip left is right at about 12 inches. Rip right, I can extend it out to about 23, which I'm going to show you a little bit later on. It does not accept a dado stack. If that's important to you, you need to remember that. Warranty is 3 years. It does not come with a stand. Table size is 23 by 19, and the height is 13 inches. It does come with dust collection, and at the time of this video, it was retailing for about $379 before tax at one of the big box stores. Let's take a look at the specifications for the R4516. It is a 10-inch, 15-amp table saw. At 0 bevel, it'll cut 3 1/4 inches. I couldn't find the specification for the 45-degree bevel. The RPMs are about 5,000. This weighs in at a hefty 54.5 pounds. That's about 10 pounds heavier than the DeWalt 745 and about 5 pounds lighter than the Bosch GTS 1031. The rip left on this is 7 inches. The rip right specification says 24, but when I measured it, and we'll look at it in a little bit, it's 24 1/4 is what I could get out of it, just shy of 24 1/4. It will take a dado stack with an optional insert. It doesn't come with a dado insert. The warranty in the manual says 3 years. On the box it says lifetime, so you'll need to do some research into that. It does not come with a stand. The table on this is 19 by 28. It does have good dust collection, which I'm going to show you a little bit in just a little bit. And online at the time of this recording, it was $249. Let's take a look at the accessories for the DeWalt. Naturally, it does come with a fence, and we're going to take a look at that and the fence control mechanism in more detail later on. It does come with a push stick and anti-kickback pause. It also comes with a blade guard. The blade that it comes with naturally is a DeWalt. It also comes with a miter gauge, but I got to tell you I'm disappointed in it. It's not T-track. This happens to be a miter gauge from a $139 saw. It is T-track, if you can see in there closely, and a little bit easier to read. It does come with the standard wrenches. So that's about it for the DeWalt accessories. Let's take a look at the accessories. First of all, it does come with a standard fence and the typical push stick that you'll find with most of the table saws. It does come with wrenches in the back and an Allen wrench there, anti-kickback pause, and then it does have a blade guard, and of course it does come with a Ridgid blade. I must say on this blade guard it was one of the easier ones to install. And then it does come with a really nice miter gauge, which I'm going to talk more about in just a moment. If you've seen any of my other table saw reviews, you know one of the biggest criticisms I have, even in the table saws that are at the $500 or $600 level, is they have these very, I'm going to use the term cheap, very, very cheap miter gauges, very poor incrementation on them, very difficult to view, very short, and really don't stay in place well. You know, this must cost them probably $2 or $3 to produce for the other table saws. However, for the Ridgid, they have a much nicer miter gauge. Now, is this a $120 to $200 miter gauge? I don't think so, but I think you can get pretty accurate with this. So if you compare the increments on here, look at the difference in how fine the increments are on this one compared to the cheaper one, which is typical of even the more expensive saws. Also, what they have on this is they have stops that you can use, and you can set these stops. Take your measuring devices, measure this to make sure this is square or at 45 or whatever degree that you want. Set these stops, and then you use this little guy right here to make sure you're at the right stop. So you can set this up for stops, if you're especially if you're moving back and forth between different angle cuts. Of course, this is threaded, so you can put it in a handle or a clamp if you want to put a clamp in here. You have two slots that if you want to add a piece of wood or metal or some other device to help increase the width of your miter gauge, that's fine. But one of the things I also like is the disc or donut that's on here, because what that does is that keeps this stable. So I took a measuring stick and said, okay, how far back can I come safely with this and still be able to do a cross cut? I measured this out from the blade to about here, 10 inches before it starts to get a little bit too wobbly. So this is going to allow you, this kind of extends the width of your table, okay? So instead of just having this amount of distance, you've got a full 10 inches. If you want to take a few chances, you might be able to get it out to 11 inches. Also, I found, again, compared to all the other miter gauges that I've reviewed, this one has very, very little wobble. So as you push your workpiece through the blade, you know it's going to stay at the angle that you set it to. So again, this to me is a big differentiation on this saw. Using my metal square, you can see that there's no distortion in the table, either left to right, and I also did it front to back. So this unit, having come from the factory, has no distortion in the tabletop. I've read some reviews of some table saws by owners that say the tables are not square. So I think from now on in all my reviews, I'm going to try to remember to do a check with my measuring device, and I cannot find anything off no matter where I set this. This table is basically square or flat with itself. So there's no deviation whether I go 45 either way or I go front to back. Even if I go this way, there doesn't appear to be any warping or distortion in this aluminum tabletop. The blade alignment on the DeWalt appears to be pretty good. You can see by the daylight right there. I've got some light behind it for you. It's pretty good on the 90-degree angle, and also at 45, it's almost dead on. So for this unit from the factory, blade alignment was very well done. Another thing I wanted to check on this saw, and I'm going to start doing on all the other saws that I review, is checking the zero bevel. So I'm getting in this about as close as I can. You can still see it. This is a little bit off. So you can see that it's just a tad off at zero bevel, which indicates to me that has to be some kind of adjusting, unless that really doesn't make a difference to the type of woodworking or cutting that you're doing. Just a hair of a gap in there. So let me turn this over. We'll take a look and see if there's any kind of adjustment for the zero bevel on this Ridgid table saw. Let's take a look from the top down inside the DeWalt. Of course, you have your table insert, and this little mechanism right here is used to lock it in place. There's 4 set screws, 2 in the front and 2 in the back. And they set on these little posts right there. Of course, here's the blade. And as you can see right there, the arbor will not take a dado stack. And then here's the riving knife, and there's a very good little knob that allows you to change the position or actually take the riving knife out. And one thing I've noticed about this insert area, there's plenty of room to get your hands down in here to change out this blade. And of course, there's the dust control right there. I'll give you another angle on it. When I turn it upside down, I'll show you that in more detail. So that is the top-down inside view of the DeWalt. Let's take a peek under the hood from the top of the saw. So as you can see here, there's enough threading so that you could apply a dado stack to that arbor. And then back here is the riving knife. And on several other saws I've seen the same thing. It's a very high visibility lever to adjust and or to remove your riving knife. So it's very convenient. There's enough space in here, there's enough gap in between the blade and the side that you can get your hands down there fairly easily. One thing I have noticed on this one, you do have a dust control, which I'm going to show you more about in a little bit. But the dust control ends about 3 inches before the tabletop. So I'm going to show that to you from another angle, but it makes me wonder how good the dust control is on this with this kind of gap in between the tabletop and the dust control cowling. Let's take a look at the exterior and the onboard storage for the DeWalt. It does come with storage for your power cord. And here you can see some of the tubular framing. We're going to take a closer look at that when I turn it upside down. It's got 2 bumper feet in the front, and in the back it does have adjustable feet. The crank did come pre-assembled. There are the increments for your bevel control, rack and pinion control knob right there. Let's go around this side. Up here on the fence you do have storage for your push stick. There's storage down here for your blade guard, and then of course both your wrenches. And right there in that little cubby hole you can see the anti-kickback paws. By the way, when you get a chance, take a look at my other video on how to get the most out of your DeWalt table saw, because I talk about storage on some of this. And then I can't find any storage for this, for the miter gauge. So again, take a look at that other video. I'll put the link in the description below because there is a solution for that. I'm going to turn this around and put it in the light so we can see the back side of the DeWalt. This happens to be the back of the DeWalt. So let me get up here a little bit closer. You can see the dust control there, and I think you can see some of there's one of the wing nuts that allow you to take off one panel there. Again, on this side is your blade guard, anti-kickback paw sitting up in there, and of course there's your motor and the back side of the fence control mechanism. Let's get a close-up of these welds on this cross member here. There's the other one. And there's the adjustable feet that I was talking about, and of course holes front and back so you can tie it down to your bench or workspace, whatever you're doing. So that is the back of the DeWalt. Let's take a closer look at the exterior on the Ridgid. For the table insert, it's a very simple pop in and pop out with these little snaps. This lever controls the table extension. I'm going to show you more about that in a few minutes. You do have handles on the left and on the right hand side. These are relatively comfortable, and there's enough room on this side. If you have a thick pair of gloves, you shouldn't have any difficulty getting your hand in there. Down here is onboard storage for your push stick, and then of course your miter gauge. I'm not able to find any onboard storage for the blade guard or for the anti-kickback paws or for the Allen wrench. You know, I think they may have enough space underneath that they could probably put some kind of snap-in situation there like they did on the others. There's also a carrying handle down here. This extends in and out, and I'm going to talk more about that in a little bit. It does have really good plastic feet for bolting it down onto a table. There's 4 of those all the way around. They are non-adjustable. The tubing appears to be welded pretty well, at least on the one that I have. I'll show you more when I get this upside down and we can see inside. I must say I do like the incrementing on the bevel control here. It's a very fine bevel control, but like I said, even at 0 bevel, the blade is not at 90 degrees to the table. Handle is relatively comfortable. I do like this little control for snapping it into place. This really only has 2 sides to store it in. I wouldn't store it on the back because of the railing on the back, and I'm going to show you the back there in a minute. But it does have 2 little feet, one on the front and one on the back, so you can store it up on that edge. Does have cord management and does have places for storing your wrenches. Does not have a place for storing additional blades. And it does have 2 rollers, 2 feet or wheels for rolling. And I'll discuss that more in a minute after I show you the back. The 4516 does have dust control and a port on the back. So it does have a cowling that you can see on this side and then on the other side. And if you can see, I'll show this to you upside down. You can't see it really well from this angle, but there is that gap up there that I talked about earlier. And a very simple wing nut for taking this off and cleaning it out. Just a very, very simple wing nut there. And of course, place to plug in your shop vac or whatever dust control you're using. Let's take a look under the hood of the DeWalt. This is the control for the rack and pinion fence control mechanism. And of course you can see how the frame is bolted into the tabletop along with the face. The rack and pinion control runs all the way across here, all the way to the other side, back over there to control the back side for you. And then right there is the locking mechanism. Another shot of the holders for the blade guard, and of course there's your anti-kickback paws. This is the back side of where the wrenches are stored on board. And this is the dust control right here. As you can see, there's 4 different wing nuts that allow you to take that panel off if you have to clean that out for any reason. I wanted to come in here closer. There's several of these welds, and I'll show you those as I go. 2 feet on the back are basically adjustable, and of course holes for bolting it into your bench or whatever work area you are. There's another shot of one of the welds. This is the motor right there. That's the motor. And then there's the mechanism for controlling the height and of course the bevel of the blade. And you've got 2 bumper feet on the front to keep it in place. So that's one view. I'm going to turn this around in the light so we can get you a better view of the back side and the dust control. This is the back side of under the hood. There's the rear of the rack and pinion system. And there is the dust control. I'll get you an angle down here. Okay, that's the dust control system. So that's basically it for under the hood with the DeWalt. Now let's take a look under the hood. First, I want to talk about the cast aluminum tabletop, which I showed you from the other side, but it appears to have all the webbing that needs to be there to keep it rather rigid, so it's not going to warp on you even if you put a load on it. This is the railing for the fence control. We'll show you more about that later on. And of course, this is how the saw body ties into the tabletop. Over here is the set of gears. You can see that in this light. I've added a lot of extra light. Hopefully it'll show up for you. There are the gears for controlling up and down and the bevel. Earlier I said I couldn't find where the bevel could be adjusted any better than 0. It was just a little bit less than 0 bevel. And it appears that there are some Allen wrench controls both on the front and the back. I'll show you them. Well, let's see if we can get it over here. You can see them right there. That may allow you to compensate for the lack of a full 90 degrees. Of course, there's your motor. And then this is the cowling that I was talking about. And then down there you can see that gap that I was talking about earlier. So you can see the orange table insert that's below there. I can't get my hand down in there and hold the camera at the same time. But you can see the gap. I'll see if I can give you another angle on it. Here is the handle for moving this around. I'm going to talk more about that in a minute, as well as I'm going to show you more about these wheels. I must say the wheels are hollow, so these are not heavy-duty wheels. If you're thinking about this for taking it on the job site, I don't know that these wheels would hold up very well. It does have an axle that goes all the way across, which is going to keep them stable, but these are not heavy-duty wheels. I would see these being used for around your garage and around your home. Down here is the control which allows you to move the extension to the right hand side of the blade, and I'm going to talk more about that in a few minutes. Let me see if I can get another angle on this for you from the back side. So here we are on the back side, and I think I've got a little bit better light. You can see this cowling. It comes down here. But you see that gap? See that gap in there? You can put your hand in there. That's the gap between the tabletop and the blade. I haven't seen that on the other saws, that big of a gap on the other saws that I've reviewed. I just don't know what it's going to do. Okay, so that is the gap there. Again, wing nuts here, so you got 1, 2, 3 wing nuts to take this off and clean it out. These are the hex head bolts that may, and that's a big question mark because I haven't found it in the manual, may allow you to correct for a blade that will not do a true 90 degrees to the tabletop. It's off by a fraction. It may be nothing more than backing these out and putting a washer in there to shim it up a little bit, but I haven't been able to find it in the manual itself. Another view on the tubing and the welding. All the welds and tubing seem to be very well done. And of course another shot of the table's top from underneath. So that's it for under the hood. The DeWalt kind of sort of lends itself to being stored on either the left or right hand side. So right now, I don't know if you can see very well, the power cord is kind of keeping it off the table. So it can be stored on that left hand side, and on both the left and right hand side there's these little bumper type guys that you see right there. But if you want to store it on this right hand side, you're going to have to remove both of these clips that are going to be in the way. So I don't know that I'd recommend storing it on the side, and of course you don't want to store it on the back of the front because you're going to damage the rack and pinion fence control mechanism. This table saw incorporates a feature which I haven't seen on any of the other table saws that I've reviewed so far. It does have integral wheels built into the base along with a nice handle for moving it around. Reminds me an awful lot of the rollaboard or carry-on luggage that I've been using for years. I currently have this standing up on the bumpers that reside on the left-hand side of the tabletop. But one thing that's real nice about this is once you put it up on its edge, like that, it has a much smaller footprint. So if you're tight for space in your garage like I am, this becomes a very important feature. And it also means if you want to roll it around from one position to another in your work area, you're not having to manhandle all 54.5 pounds with the saw. So this is a very, very nice feature to have if you're looking for storage and portability. Again, I wouldn't recommend these wheels for, rolling it around on a rough job site, but boy, for in your garage, in your work area, they're really handy. Let's take a close look at the front of the fence control mechanism. As you can see here, very easy to read increments in both inches and centimeters. All the way down here, if that'll stay into focus, there we go. And then you have this little gauge, very easy to read. It's also easy to keep clean, to blow out underneath there. And then that is adjustable with those two Phillips head screws, so that if you're using a jig or you change out your blade or something like that, you can adjust this accordingly. And then, of course, this runs all the way down here. Now, I'm going to set up my tripod and we're going to take a closer look at the fence control mechanism. Let's take a look at the rack and pinion fence control system for the DeWalt. There's a very simple handle on the right-hand side that locks it into place. All you have to do is lift it up. And then using this control knob here, you control the rack and pinion system, which moves both the front and the back part of the fence control simultaneously. And when we turn this over, I'll show you that mechanism in greater detail. Once you get it out to all the way to the right-hand side, there is a little bar that you can set down that'll hold your workpiece steady so it's not sagging down onto the railing itself. This is a metal component here with a little bit of plastic on it to help it to slide better. But in spite of that, it is very solid. There's no wiggle room in that or within the fence when you do this. If I bring this back up to here, and I lock it back into place, I'm going to pop this up. And there's a lot of wiggle room in here, so you have to line it up. In my case, I had it lined up flush all the way to the right, but you're going to notice there's this set screw here and this set screw here. There's corresponding set screws in the back. Once you lift this up, and if you can see that little notch right there, let's see if I can do this with any kind of grace, and lock it into place, then that is pretty much parallel to your miter slot and to your blade. And of course, if you decide to move these around, you can loosen them, get them aligned correctly, tighten them down, and have multiple places on your fence control system that allow you to move this back and forth very rapidly. And of course, if you make some adjustments here, as I showed you earlier, these are adjustable as well. So depending on the work that you're doing, if you swap out the blade for a thinner kerf blade, you're fine. And naturally, this racks out to this side. And let me take this off so you can see it. This also goes all the way out to the left, so you have a good distance on the left-hand side for the, let's see if I can get this into place for you with any kind of grace on the back. So that's locked into place on that side, and that ends up being about 12 and maybe 5/8, 12 and a half from the blade. And of course, if you don't want to use these post here, you can slide it out a little bit further. You might get another ½ inch out of it if you can see that slack there. So the fence control mechanism, this rack and pinion fence mechanism, is very unique to this class of saw. I want to show you some aspects of the fence control mechanism and the increments on here. I'm going to come in nice and close, and you can see these increments are very, very easy to read. Even in a lower light, you're going to be able to see them well. Also, I found this shows 24 and just under 1/4 inches. And when I measure this out to the right-hand side, which I'll show you later on, it measures almost exactly. So this is spot on. There's your increments for your left rib, from the blade out to the left, and then here's your increments for your right rib. I really like this view here. If I can get that into focus for you. Very, very easy to read these increments. It does flush out to the right-hand side, and that's as far as it'll go. So I'm going to get another angle on this and show you how the actual fence control itself works. Let's take a look at the fence control mechanism. First of all, there is on the top is a lever right here that allows you to move this in and out. This is the first time I've seen it on the top. All the other mechanisms I've seen so far either have it located here or actually under this extension itself. So when you lift this up, you just slide this out, and it's fairly easy to slide. So if you remember, I think I had the Craftsman or the Ryobi. They were both a little bit stiff for extending the extension out to the right-hand side. Once you get it into position, you want to lock it in place. The only criticism I have of this is if you have a workpiece and you don't want to move it, you have to move the workpiece out to get to this, to change the position of this extension. All the others do it underneath. But otherwise I like it. It's convenient. You can see it. Very easy to use. Once you have this out here, this is very stable. This is not wiggling or moving at all. There is zero play up or down or horizontally on this. When I measured this out, from the blade to the fence, where it stops is just shy of 24 1/4 inches. So if you want to rip a piece of 48 by 96 piece of whatever, you can certainly do that with this extension and this bench. I'm going to pull this back up here, bring it in close again. I did find, most of the ones that I see that have this kind of lift up, slide it into position, and lock it down, what I find is you have to be very careful about the alignment of the back. I played with this for quite some time, and when I bring it up to the edge, I don't know if you can see it very well there, and all I do is lock it down. It stays parallel with that crease or even the miter gauge slot here. So if you do the same thing here, once I line it up, lock it into place, it's not getting squirrely in the back side. Okay? Maybe just a little bit off. But it's a lot better than some of the other controls that I've seen, and this is very, very positive. Of course, you can either set this up here or on the left-hand side of the blade, depending on what kind of rip that you're going to be doing. But in terms of your overall ripping capacity, you get a full 24 plus about 3/8, something like that, just under 24¼ inches for your wide rip capacity. Let's take a look at the noise levels on the DeWalt. So as you can see here, it's running out at about 94 decibels, okay? So if we take a look at this chart, you can see 94 decibels is right down into the red. So if you're using this power tool, you need to make sure you have good hearing protection along with anybody else that's working with you. I think when it comes to eye protection and hearing protection, there's an awful lot of people who will naturally put on their eye protection, but they don't think about putting on their hearing protection. So in all my videos going forward, I want to start measuring the noise levels of these power tools. So let's take a look at the Ridgid, and I'll turn this on and let's see what we come away with. See if I can get that where you can see it. That noise level is right at 100. Okay? So I want you to keep that in mind the next time you're thinking about just using your eye protection. And the reason I say that is, if we take a look at this scale, if you look at 100 dB, you're down in the red area. You're starting to sustain damage to your ears over a period of time. So whether you're working by yourself, you have other people with you, not only should you have your eye protection, but you should have your hearing protection as well. I hope I've been able to provide you with enough insight into the specifications and features of these two table saws to help you to identify the one that best meets your requirements and your budget. I've uploaded a number of other table saw, miter saw, and drill press comparison videos, and have placed their links in the description below. If you found this video of value, please press like. If you're not already a subscriber, I would love to have you as a subscriber. And as always, good luck on your projects. Hi-ho, it's off to work I go. There are two bumper feet, two bumper feet on the front of the frame. 3, 2, 1. So I want to provide you with a different angle on the